The generation known as millennials have often been criticized and described as entitled, but many say the opposite is true, that millennials are actually workaholics and put quite a bit of pressure on themselves to be better and to achieve more. I spoke with author and leadership development specialist Rachel Simmons to learn more about this generation.
Well, I think we're just seeing a generation of students who no longer have the same financial security that our generation may have had. And so that anxiety can sometimes make them feel like they can't work hard enough because they don't really know what's going to happen next. But it's also a generation that's had to work harder than any other to get into college. I always joke with my students that I probably never would have gotten into Smith College back, now. When I applied, it was easy, but now things are a lot harder, and that makes students feel incredible pressure, and also they never really know how hard they're going to have to work to get where they want to go. So all of that creates a lot of perfectionism and a lot of stress.
It's interesting that you said that, because you do look at all the different colleges, the big name colleges. I went to Boston College. I'd never get in now, right? And I was pretty smart back then.
Exactly.
But when you have a 4.7 GPA, and a 1600 on the SATs, and you're waitlisted.
That's right. And these students have no idea what it's going to take because the criteria for getting in are so mysterious now, and even these perfect people are being rejected.
Right, so it does create a lot of pressure. But when you think of millennials, a lot of times, I could say this is right, as somebody from Generation X, you would look at them like they were coddled or entitled. That usually seemed to be the narrative or the perception that people would have. But here you are talking about they are working, like crazy to get where they want to be.
Yeah, and I think it's, in fairness to them, I think many of them have been raised by so-called helicopter parents who haven't really given them the opportunity to fail or to be independent.
You're looking right at me.
Well, this is a highly overscheduled generation. Yeah. And so when you deal with young adults who really haven't had a lot of free time, they haven't had opportunities to challenge themselves and to navigate stress on their own, a lot of them arrive at college and they don't necessarily have some of the life skills that us older and wiser women may be accustomed to. And so rather than blame them for it, I think we actually just need to work with them and also look at ourselves as parents and say, how did we contribute to this?
Right. I think the other thing with millennials too is when you look at the age group, it's 18 to 35, which is a huge swing. So, put the college kids aside, but those millennials in their late 20s would have lived through, the recession, would have understood what unemployment and underemployment is, having a few different jobs, or coming out of school with this expensive degree with nowhere to go.
That's right. And don't you think, when I was growing up, people had jobs for 20, 30 years. So this is also one of the first generations not to have the expectation or the certainty that there's always going to be a job there or that they can make their home in a company for their entire lives. And that is going to call for a new set of skills that maybe they don't have and maybe we haven't learned how to teach yet.
Also, talk a little bit about the anxiety, because seems to be this, desire to be perfect, right? You want to be perfect in every way. And you were talking about, just the expectations of getting into college and just being perfect to get in. How does that, translate as far as, mental health issues and other issues?
So on the one hand, I think it's wonderful that our young adults are now talking about mental health and they're asking for help in numbers that we've never seen before. On the other hand, we have to ask ourselves, why is there this epidemic? And so I think in part it has to do with that pressure. In part, we have a lot of students who are turning to social media and to screens and who are saying that they are more lonely than they've ever been before. So I think we have a lot of students and young people who are less connected and they're not being nourished by their relationships in the same ways that they used to. And so these are new problems that we haven't really seen before. And many of us are still, as educators, as researchers, trying to figure out what the best interventions are.
And when you're talking about screen time, there's another study that said that millennials, out of anybody, can't go on vacation and just relax and, and put that phone away. They're constantly connected, answering emails, looking at texts and everything else.
That's right. And I think, in many ways, we did not teach that first generation that got their smartphones at the age of 10, 12, 13 years old how to use them wisely. We just said here, we overestimated all the positive benefits that would come and accrue to these students using smartphones, but we didn't teach them to have a healthier, more careful relationship with them and how to turn them off, as you point out.
And I think adults have, if they are adults, but
Well,
I think
even right at you as a parent, we set the example.
We set the example,
right? Absolutely.
Just as bad.
Yes.
You have a new book out, Enough as She Is, and it kind of deals with some of the issues that we're talking about of trying to be perfect and the expectations for young women.
The book is really about setting people up to fail, which some people say, what? And I think what we've done is we've spent way too much time helping our children succeed. We haven't given them the tools to fail. And so, of course, what happens is if all you know how to do is expect the best out of yourself, but you don't know how to recover when the best doesn't pan out, you're only going to go so far. There's going to be a very low ceiling on your performance. And I also think it's critical that we tell all young adults that you should be able to succeed without sacrificing your self-worth, without sacrificing your wellness. And I think that's a lesson many young adults still have to learn.
But when you talk about allowing your child to fail, that's a hard thing to do. And, circling back to the millennials, everybody gets a trophy was not necessarily a great idea. But it is hard when you fall flat on your face to be able to pick yourself back up and still love yourself.
It's true. But one thing we don't talk enough about is that it's often the parents who want the children to get the trophies. And it's the parents who don't want their kids to fail. And so instead of saying what's wrong with the kids, that they can't handle failure, the work that I often do with parents is teaching them how to calm themselves down.
And back off.
And back off and learn how to regulate your anxiety as a parent when your child fails to live up to some standard that you've set for them.
And do you think that the younger generation is just more, waiting longer to have a family and really has this idea of, I have to be a success, where, in previous generations, it was perfectly great to get married and have a family?
Well, I think the main thing that's changed is that women are delaying childbirth because they know that they can earn more money until they do that. And so what we're seeing is more women are waiting until they're financially not just stable, but independent, as they never have been before. And that's when they're making the decision. In fairness, that's also because workplaces often punish women who leave for having children. And so I think women have gotten clued into that. The problem, of course, is down the line that can affect fertility, right? It can affect the age that you decide to become a parent. But I think that's the main reason, is that women know that their financial independence hangs in the balance.
What's your advice to people about having it all? Because I don't think you can have it all, and it's okay not to have it all.
Yeah, so I definitely think it's important. Authenticity really counts. So the people who educate and parent young adults need to model imperfection. The more that we try to act like we've never made a mistake or that we do have it all, the more we send a message to young people that that's within their grasp, and it isn't. I think also it's like you can have it all, but not all at once. And I'm not the author of that saying, that you have to be able to pick and choose. You have to choose according to your values, what matters. Right now it may be family. 10 years from now, it may be work, but nobody gets to do everything brilliantly all at once.